It's another week, another set of bad actors, malicious files, and compromised systems. On today's show, we're going to be talking about some of the intel being shared by our awesome InfoSec community, and a huge thank you to all those folks that take the time to share their knowledge with the rest of us. If you enjoy listening in on these intel chats and aren't in our community forum yet, then you should join the conversation. Lots of information is being shared there, and you will get it in real time. You can join us at community.limacharlie.io, and as always, for these conversations, I'm joined by the one and only Matt Bromley. How are you doing today, sir?
Hey, Chris, I'm doing so well, man. It's great to be here, and great to hear from you, both hears, if you will. I am back in the northern Texas area, so I'm not traveling for a little while. For the next few episodes, we'll actually be home to home, which will be great. But I'm excited to be here. Looking forward to this as always with you. And I don't know, we got some cool stuff lined up today, so let's jump into it.
No mention of the weather today?
I think we'll leave that one for anyone who's paying attention, only because northern Texas weather for the month of June is just extremely rare right now.
Okay.
It's cool and temperate, but it's rainy, and I don't really want to talk about the rain. We don't want to give it any stage time, right?
I got you.
It's had its time. Get out of here.
I'm from the Pacific Northwest. We got a big heart for the rain, so
That's where it belongs. Like, go back there. We don't need you here.
yeah. All right, let's jump into it. I know we're both busy today. So first up, over an 8-month period beginning in July of last year, China-backed threat actors carried out a coordinated campaign that included attempts to breach cybersecurity vendor SentinelOne. The company's threat research division, Sentinel Labs, publicly attributed the activity to a broader ShadowPad malware campaign and a more targeted activity cluster dubbed PurpleHaze. SentinelOne itself was targeted in 2 distinct incidents. One involved remote reconnaissance of internet-facing servers in October, while the other involved an indirect attempt to breach through a third-party logistics provider earlier this year. Both efforts align with observed tactics commonly used by known Chinese APT groups. The responsible clusters are believed to be operated by APT-15, also known by aliases such as Flea, Nickel, and Playful Dragon, and UNC5174. A group previously reported by Mandiant and suspected to be a contractor for the Chinese state. In the more recent incident, attackers breached an external service provider that managed hardware logistics for SentinelOne employees. Although SentinelOne states that no compromises of internal infrastructure was detected, they note that it remains unclear whether the attackers were targeting only the third-party firm or attempting to pivot into SentinelOne systems as a downstream target, an approach consistent with Chinese espionage tradecraft. So this is super interesting. It looks like, a supply chain attack to get into the security supply chain for probably a third party, which is like the actual target of this kind of espionage.
Yeah, interesting too to see security vendors targeted in this type of thing, Chris. I think SentinelOne probably had some really. I kind of want to imagine what it's like unraveling this investigation and then realizing that you might be the target. You might be kind of the ultimate target there. It definitely, I think, attaches a little bit of emotion, but kind of like hits home a little bit there. I don't think, though, security vendors being a target is definitely anything new. I do remember, way back in the day when like Mandiant dropped the very first APT-1 report, it was immediately followed by a DDoS attempt and all sorts of stuff, at least I believe it would have been, right? Typically, I think when any threat actor gets doxed or announced or released, there's always a little bit of, as well as we've commented before on this show, probably a few shots pass around. Congratulations, you made it. You just got indicted. You made it, right? You're on the DOJ list. But nonetheless, to stick to the technical side of it, really crazy to see APT-15 mentioned in this. I believe they've had a 20-year life cycle or a 20-year track or something like that, right? Activity window. UNC5174 being thrown in there, a contractor working on behalf of the government. And I think this really kind of shows, Chris, just how like geopolitical forces may continue to move threat actors or cyber threat actors towards certain areas. In addition to, we've seen like service providers and software vendors and things like that targeted before because it's a one-to-many attack relationship. I can compromise one environment and get access to multiple other things, right? Now, I'm not saying that's exactly why they were going after SentinelOne in this case here. It might have been more to thwart detections or understand like what do they know, what don't they know, and things like that. But in other cases, it came off as a really interesting set of targets when you think like, okay, what does the government really want with this? Right? What is
Ugh.
the government's goal with going after this company? What does that align with? And I think that's one of the biggest questions to ask right now.
Yeah, and I imagine if you had access to SentinelOne's infrastructure, you'd be able to get into some very highly secure organizations, right?
That would be my thought. Is it's kind of like that. It's an entry vector into other places, as weird as
Hmm.
it may sound, right? You get that one-to-many relationship where I can compromise one management environment and get access to what, thousands, tens of thousands of customers. I mean, yeah, it
Hmm.
could scale pretty quickly in the wrong
Yeah.
direction.
Yeah. So SentinelOne emphasized that this campaign highlights a persistent blind spot in the threat landscape, the targeting of security vendors themselves, their visibility into client environments and capacity to detect or obstruct adversary campaigns make them high priority targets. The broader ShadowPad campaign, which Sentinel Labs tracked, affected roughly 70 organizations across sectors like telecommunications, research, finance and manufacturing, and government. In response, SentinelOne initiated outreach to potentially affected customers, including the logistics provider that was involved in the January incident. On the technical front, the PurpleHaze subset, believed to be linked to APT-15, included attacks beyond SentinelOne. These involved a South Asian government and major European media organization. In the latter case, attackers exploited two Avanti Cloud vulnerabilities, tracked as CVEs just before their public disclosure using Orb infrastructure in a method that SentinelOne ties to UNC 5174. Analysts identified previously seen Gore shell backdoors as part of the PurpleHaze intrusion set. SentinelOne concludes by advocating for greater transparency and collaborative defense, calling on other targeted vendors to break the stigma around public disclosure of compromises and share indicators of compromise. So I find part of that last statement interesting because I thought with the new SEC regulations, it wasn't a choice whether they disclosed when they got breached.
Yeah, so if I remember correctly, Chris, and I've talked about this with someone in the past week, I think some of the SEC wording is carefully geared towards material impact.
Okay.
You have a time period that might kick in, and guys, I'm not a lawyer. Chris knows that very well, so please don't hold this against me. If I'm wrong, reach out via socials and let me know. But I believe there is some language around a material impact or a compromise of the CIA triad or something like that, where if you don't see those things, technically, I think you're kind of self-reporting at that point. Like
Right.
I think
Right.
if you don't have anything like really material impacting or no data was damaged or anything like that, because Chris, the flip side of this is, um, like technically, if I have someone, like scanning my website and they find a vulnerability and they launch a quick exploit that does nothing, and then my security team patches it before anything happens, we're not going to report on every single one of those. Right. So I think there is kind of a measure of, did this actually material impact something? And that might be the assessment that they're using. I'm not a lawyer. I can't comment on it. However, I'll just note and say that that's also US specific
Yeah.
as well. If I'm in the EU and I'm under things like NIS2 or DORA or whatever it is, that's obviously going to change reporting requirements as well.
Right. Okay. Well, I put this next one in just for you. CISA has added two newly confirmed exploited vulnerabilities to its known exploited vulnerabilities or KEV catalog, citing evidence of active abuse in the wild. The first, a critical authentication bypass flaw in the Erlang/Open Telecom platform, OTP or SSH server with a CVSS score of 10. This issue allows remote unauthenticated attackers to execute arbitrary commands via the SSH interface. It's already been patched in OTP version 27.3.3 and 26.2.5.11 and 25.3.2.20 as of April 2025. Public exposure remains a concern. Census reports around 340 visible Erlang servers online, though not all are necessarily exploitable. The second entry is a high-severity cross-site scripting vulnerability with a CVSS score of 9.3 in Roundcube webmail. The flaw is located in mail/show.php script and arises from improper input sanitization, enabling an attacker to send a maliciously crafted email to a target, steal their emails, and possibly conduct further downstream abuse. Fixes were released back in August of 2024 with versions 1.6.8 and 1.5.8. There's no attribution yet for the current exploitation, but it follows APT 28's past abuse of cross-site scripting bugs and similar platforms to spy on targets in Eastern Europe, according to ESET. Those are both pretty serious CVSS scores. The second one, I get really upset when I see improper input sanitization because, like, come on, people.
I know that one gets to you primarily because I think you would probably, you've been through that ringer a few times. Not that you write improper sanitization code, Chris, but I think that was kind of beaten into you academically that you don't do
Yeah,
that thing. So
yeah.
to see it happen in practice, it's got to be slightly frustrating. But if I scroll a little bit back up and we take a look at the Erlang OTP CVSS score of 10, folks, you got to love when a perfect landing hits the gymnastic floor. And with a CVSS score of 10, that is a perfect landing. Critical vulnerability, CVSS score of 10, just absolutely up there. And since it's on the KEV, that only means, and for anyone who doesn't know or didn't catch the acronym there, that is CISA's known exploited vulnerabilities catalog. Since it's on the KEV, it's out in the wild. It's being exploited out in the wild. And that only means one thing. Someone knows about this thing. They have code that works and they're taking advantage of it. I do appreciate, and I say that with a little bit of a tongue in cheek, just slight sarcasm, that a CVE temporary workaround for the OTP SSH vulnerability, Chris, is to just disable SSH. And I kind of feel like, well, that's kind of obvious workaround advice, right? Like, there's a vulnerability in my car. Okay, just don't drive. Well, technically, that doesn't work out that well. So
Yeah.
nonetheless, we're working on it kind of step by step. But patch, folks, as always. And Chris, I think there's a third one that you're going to talk about in just a second here as well.
Yeah, this is sort of the honorary mention. Not really a surprise in some sense, but apparently there's a major unpatched vulnerability in the PayU Commerce Pro WordPress plugin. It's carrying a CVSS score of 9.8 and allows an attacker to hijack any user account, including administrative ones, without authentication. Yeah, I mean, it's a WordPress plugin. It's got a vulnerability.
No way.
Pikachu face? I don't know. Worth paying attention to, the plugin is installed in over 5,000 WordPress sites and is vulnerable up to version 3.8.5. PatchStack, the lab that uncovered it, is advising users to immediately disable and remove the plugin until a patch is available. So don't drive your car. Developers are also being warned against hard-coding sensitive data like emails and leaving REST APIs overly permissive. I can get upset as I read these. Meanwhile, U.S. federal civilian executive branch agencies have been mandated to patch the Erlang and Roundcube issues by June 30th, 2025 to comply with CISA directives. Yeah, man, it's not always safe out there.
Patch.
Yes. Okay, up next, not really a vulnerability, but just kind of some neat stuff in the news. OpenAI has banned ChatGPT accounts linked to state-sponsored threat actors, including groups affiliated with governments in China, Russia, North Korea, Iran, and others. The company disclosed in a new report that these accounts were being used for activities ranging from malware development and social media automation to cyber espionage and technical research on sensitive topics like U.S. satellite communications. According to OpenAI, the actions were part of a broader counter-abuse effort over the last 3 months, during which their internal teams disrupted a variety of threats, including influence operations, scams, social engineering, and deceptive employment campaigns. Among the most significant findings was that 4 out of 10 detected abuse campaigns originated in China. OpenAI banned dozens of China-based accounts for using ChatGPT to generate large volumes of social media content designed to spread politically divisive narratives. Topics included the shutdown of USAID. USAID, is that how you pronounce that? I think so.
I think, USAID, I believe it.
Yeah, USAID, USAID, and polarizing U.S. political debates. These operations mirror tactics seen in broader coordinated information campaigns aimed at undermining Western institutions and public discourse. The company also attributed some of the activity to known Chinese threat actor groups like APT5 and, here we are again, APT15, both of which have been previously associated with state-directed cyber operations.
Interesting.
So good to see this stuff happening. No surprise, but I like to see that they're taking action and trying to identify these kind of things taking place on their platform because it's a very powerful tool.
This is one of my favorite reports to talk about whenever they release them, Chris, if it's monthly, quarterly, annually, whatever. Whenever OpenAI releases kind of their disrupting the title of the June 2025 report is disrupting malicious uses of AI. But whenever OpenAI kind of reveals this, like, here's how bad guys are using us
Hmm.
kind of a thing, I absolutely love reading through them. Interesting for prompt engineering, if anyone is curious about how adversaries make an AI do something it's not supposed to do. Because let's be clear, there are guardrails inside of OpenAI, which basically is like, don't engage in bad activity and stuff like that. Right now, I can ask an AI to craft an email as part of my marketing campaign to convince someone to do a thing. And that works. But if I say, write me a phishing email, it's not going to work. Right. So the way that you phrase it is a careful way to go through it. But that's not just the stuff they're looking into. They also look into the different types of behavior. And just reading through one of them here from like Operation High Five, right? Content analysis, comment generation, and generating PR materials relating to an influence campaign targeting audiences in the Philippines and stuff. And it's a really interesting use just to see how the platform is being used, how adversaries are using it. And on the surface, Chris, like, hey, there's lots of folks out there who are using AI and OpenAI, ChatGPT specifically, for marketing uses and utilizing an OpenAI platform for comment generation. Not that far off, right? But it's more about the intent.
Hmm.
So I like these reports because it gives us insight into how the bad guys are doing what they're doing, all the way up to, and I'm reading another one here from the report, Operation Scope Creep, if you will. And this is where they're recognizing, and I'm just reading from the report here, the threat actor utilized our model to assist in developing malware iteratively by continually requesting ChatGPT to implement further specific features. And as a result, they were able to showcase a range of techniques from delivery, execution, evasion, exfiltration, HTTPS, C2 payloads, attacker notifications via Telegram. It is a powerful tool, and it can be used, unfortunately, a little bit maliciously. So I love OpenAI's visibility into this. And I also do appreciate this report because it helps us see how adversaries are really utilizing that platform. And I find this to be pretty unique, Chris. I don't think a lot of platforms that share like a good or a bad approach get as good of a magnifying glass as we get here.
Yeah. Yeah, OpenAI almost needs an internal team, and instead of just shutting these guys' accounts down, they should be seeding that malware with like
Kill
remove
switches.
root. Yeah, yeah, just like nuke their system, give them some code to run that nukes the system.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so other state actors were leveraging the platform in distinct ways. In Cambodia, ChatGPT accounts were generating multilingual recruitment-style messages, possibly as part of online scams or phishing efforts. In North Korea, threat actors used ChatGPT to gather intelligence on security evasion tools, as well as to assist with technical tasks related to IT labor schemes, essentially helping sanctioned workers conceal their identities and remain undetected. Meanwhile, in Russia, malicious actors use the tool to develop and debug malware for Windows environments and design command and control infrastructure, streamlining parts of the malware lifecycle using generative AI. OpenAI's statement emphasized its guiding principle of responsible AI use and a commitment to preventing misuse by authoritarian regimes or criminal enterprises. The company reiterated that its mission includes ensuring AI's benefits are widely distributed and that the technology isn't weaponized against democratic systems or vulnerable populations. Notably, OpenAI isn't just focused on banning misuse, they also position AI as a tool for proactive defense, supporting detection and mitigation of abuse at scale. This aligns with their broader philosophy of applying common sense rules to mitigate harm while enabling legitimate use. Yeah, so I mean, that company's grown to, I think, 17 months to $10 billion in revenue. There's probably a lot of data to sift through and a lot of issues to deal with. The fact that they're spending time trying to make sure the platform's being used correctly, I think is great, even if I'm sure it's not perfect.
Yeah. Huge company growth. And of course, no surprise to see like such a global, huge hit of like different uses. And I think that's one of the most exciting parts about AI, Chris, is it really, we've talked about this before, I know on this show, but like really the kind of leveling of the play field, the ultimate leveling of the playing field, and I look at it as like folks out there, if the adversaries are using AI to help write their malware and, uncover new techniques, you should be using AI for a lot of the same things,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
crafting detections, understanding threats, digging through MITRE. I mean, if I still run into a SOC analyst or a SOC team who's doing kind of those mundane things manually, and I'm not talking about automating tasks, I'm talking about like research of general well-known things.
Yeah.
If you're Googling a MITRE technique, type that into a ChatGPT box and ask it for a very specific output into what it is that you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're not using API like constantly in your workflow now, you need to take a look at what other people are doing because it's here.
100%.
I think a lot of us were skeptical when it first showed up a few years ago in this new form, but it's definitely we've crossed the threshold somewhere, and it's going to be more and more a part of our daily work.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think the other little takeaway there is just note that a lot of the AI companies are being very open and transparent about their reports and what's happening and stuff like that. So if anyone out there is kind of concerned or worried about like, hey, AI is going to steal all my data, do this or do something like that, no, it's a very helpful tool, and trust me, there's a lot of value out of it.
Yeah. Okay. Last up, we have a critical vulnerability in Waza server with a CVS score of 9.9. Man, all the gymnastics gold medals today.
And
It's
Chris,
being
I think it's Wazoo. That's the only thing I'll
Wazoo.
say. Wazoo.
Wazoo. Are we at the
That's a
Sim
kid's song.
Seam thing? Yeah. Okay, so it's being actively exploited by threat actors to deliver multiple Mirai botnet variants for distributed denial of service operations. The flaw, which affects Wazoo version 4.4.0 and above, was patched in February of 2025 with version 4.9.1, but attacks began within weeks of the public POC release. The vulnerability is rooted in an unsafe deserialization issue in the Wazoo API, where it improperly processes JSON data, enabling arbitrary remote code execution when a malicious payload is injected. Akamai, which discovered these attacks in March and May of 2025, observed exploitation attempts that drop Mirai-based payloads via shell scripts. One of the botnets utilizes a downloader hosted at a specific IP to fetch Mirai variants compiled for various CPU architectures. These variants include LZRD, which I believe is meant to be Red Lizard, previously seen in campaigns targeting end-of-life GeoVision IoT devices. Akamai noted that Lizard and its variants like Neon and Vision are widely repurposed across multiple threat campaigns, making actor attribution difficult. The same infrastructure was linked to exploits of vulnerabilities in other services, including TP-link routers and ZTE hardware. So yeah, this is another attack on a security service. I think there's like a trend here, maybe.
When's it going to end? Is it going to end? Who knows? Yeah, this is yet another situation where, I think once again, adversaries have known this for a while. Maybe it's just more kind of in front of our face here, Chris, but they're recognizing that security software is a great little vehicle to piggyback off of. First off, you get access into multiple environments, especially if you're targeting the cloud side of it. It is possible to download and run Wazoo locally, but Wazoo Cloud, I believe, probably opens up the keys to a bunch of other organizations inside of it, number one. Number two, security software. It's often deployed with permissions, and it's given its own allow list a lot of times. And if you're an adversary trying to do a thing, it's great to know. And then third, Wazoo is largely open source, if I'm not mistaken. I think there's a hosted cloud option. And I'm double checking my facts here, but it's
Yeah,
an open
I believe
source
that's what they
XDR.
operate with. Yeah, it's an open
Yeah.
source product, but if you want the one-click thing where you don't have to worry about the infrastructure, they sell that as a service.
So even better, if I can spend all day with the code base, or even worse, pile it off to an AI to look at, right? Then that would be another way to say, hey, I found a vulnerability here, and maybe we can target it and attack it. And if I can get access to some vendor or some customers using them, hey, even better.
Okay, so the second botnet exploiting the I want to say
I
Wazoo
know.
flaw is distributing a variant dubbed Resbot, aka Resentual, which distinguishes itself by its use of Italian-themed domain names suggesting possible geographic targeting or linguistic tailoring. Resbot spreads through FTP and Telnet while also exploiting long-known vulnerabilities. The botnet's modular nature and reuse of Mira source code highlight how threat actors continue to weaponize even older vulnerabilities in combination with newly disclosed ones. Mirai campaigns are also leveraging additional vectors beyond Wazoo. For example, a command injection vulnerability has been exploited to deliver botnet payloads. The payloads include anti-VM checks to avoid sandbox analysis, and Kaspersky reports that this activity is concentrated in countries like China, India, Egypt, Ukraine, and Brazil, with over 50,000 exposed DVRs online. The broader Mirai ecosystem thrives on the prevalence of unpatched Linux-based IoT devices, which are constantly being scanned and infected. These attacks come amid increasing DDoS sophistication, particularly in the APAC region. Stormwall reported that newer techniques like API floods and carpet bombing are surpassing traditional volumetric attacks, prompting a shift towards more adaptive defenses. Concurrently, the FBI issued a warning about the Bad Box 2.0 botnet, with millions of compromised, often China-manufactured IoT devices turned into proxy nodes for criminal activity. Some of these are pre-infected at the factory or during app downloads, further complicating device hygiene and security baselines for consumers and enterprises alike. So I feel like we kind of spun out at the end a little there, but interesting to see that DDoS it's getting a second life. I wasn't aware of API floods, but just from the name, I kind of have a sense of what that kind of attack would look like. Carpet bombing is definitely something I'll have to look up.
Yeah, that is. I would, dig a little bit more. It's funny, Chris, when we were first talking about it or reviewing today's notes, to see Mirai botnet pop up again definitely threw me for a little bit of a, oh my gosh, we're really reaching back here,
What year
Mirai
is it?
botnet, APT 5, APT 15. I mean, wow, we're reaching back here. But I mean, if it works and if there's a bunch of stuff out there, it's totally possible, right? To
I
definitely
believe
happen.
Mirai's source code has been leaked all over, so
That's the other thing too, is
yeah.
I would imagine there's somewhere in the vicinity of, I mean, even if it's 10,000, it's a lot, right?
Yeah.
Somewhere in the vicinity of tens of thousands of vulnerable systems out there that are probably still infected and are just like waiting, like, hey, I'm still out here. No one ever disconnected me. And I don't know, you want some cycles? Like, here we go.
Cool. Well, that's the end of another week, man. They just fly by. So this is, I think, going to go out as 220 or 221. So
Awesome.
Next one, 222.
Love
we'll
it.
have to pop the champagne.
There we go. All right. I love it. Sounds good. I'll get prepared for next week then.
Okay, sir. Take care.
Awesome, Chris. Great to talk to you. Take care.
Bye.